We can go in here and fix it by adding some filters. That is what I have done here. The main filter is a cut here at 40 Hz. High Q minus 8 decibels again to fix this. And then there are some minor corrections further up in frequency, which is also determined primarily by looking at what is happening in time. I'm not so concerned about the frequency response. So we can then upload this to the subwoofer, and we can also do a similar assessment and change on the other subwoofer. So let's upload this to preset 2 and then measure again. We have fixed the EQ. Let's try to measure, and then we can compare to what we had before. We will now remove the other ones. You see here what we have here compared to what we had there. The frequency response looks way more promising. Still have the hole. You see here the resonance is greatly reduced compared to what we had here. And what we see is that it isn't, when we reduce the resonance, the ringing relative to the top also reduces. So it's not just that we bring it down, then the resonance level goes down, because the amplitude goes down, because the ringing reduces more than what we cut in the frequency response. So this way of equalizing a bus system, a subwoofer, removes resonances. That is mainly what is causing the bad sound, the part that we can fix, that is. So let's measure the left and right, not the right speaker, right subwoofer will be a similar procedure. So, okay, this is the left and right now, and this is the left and right that we had. Huge improvement, but we still have this hole. And the thing about this hole is that this is a cancellation. And in this room it is mainly caused by the location of the listening position compared to the back wall. And this cannot be fixed by adding gain on the subwoofer. You have to move the subwoofer or the listening position. The listening position is where it is. That's nothing we can do about, because that is how this room is set up and has to be to work as a room, to be able to accommodate seating in a practical way. And then there's the placement of the subwoofers. I could take one subwoofer and place it in the rear left corner. That will fix the problem, and that is how I would do it if this is system that I'm going to live it. Also, the subwoofers would be better off placed closer to the front wall, closer to boundaries. But since there is already speakers and subwoofers standing in the way, that we can't do that. So they are placed where they can be for this purpose of this test. And for testing and showing what can be done and what cannot be done, that is good enough. So we can't fix the dip, we could fix the resonance, and actually there isn't that much more we can do with this. There is some, I've done some fine tuning on the frequency response to further reduce some resonances further up in frequency, and that's about it. The main speaker doesn't have any EQ, it's only a roll-off. So now is the question, could we improve this further by adding some improvements to the integration? Maybe. Let's see. Now let's play our sound clip with preset 2, where we now have fixed the bass resonance and done EQ on the subwoofers. It's as good as we can achieve. We can turn on the real-time analyzer to see what is going on here. Okay, sounds better, doesn't it? Let's try the next clip. That's how it is. Now I've tried to improve integration, but there isn't that much to improve, because out of the box, since this system already is properly integrated. But I can try a different delay on the main speakers to see if that can make it better. And it is different and perhaps slightly better. Not much, but slightly better. So you go from 6 milliseconds to 10 milliseconds delay. Let's see how this measures. Now we won't bother with only the left speaker. It's the same change that is done on both subwoofers. There's a lot of cables and wires and connecting and disconnecting and so on. It's a struggle to deal with this system. Imagine when you have 4 subwoofers like the main subwoofer system here. It's horrible to work with. So we better get some results. Let's measure and see what happens. So the decay looks a little bit better, perhaps. Let's see on the spectrogram. Here we see this is with a 6 millisecond delay, and here is the 10 millisecond. And we see a small improvement, but it's not that huge, and it isn't really a very big difference, this. And we shouldn't expect to have a huge audible difference. So that's how this was possible to be fixed with additional customized calibration for this bass system. You see, on the spectrogram, we would ideally have a completely flat curve here. You see, the bass is delayed. That is due to the location of the subwoofers and this reflection from the back wall. The main big system with the 4 subwoofers is completely flat. So if this system should be improved, then place them in the corners, and then buy 2 more, place them in the back, and then have an expert calibrate them. Because if you don't calibrate that system with 4 subwoofers correctly, it will not sound good. But let's hear now how this actually sounds. So here it is. It is preset 3. We have calibrated, and we have done some minor adjustments on the integration. So this is as good as it gets. With those subwoofers, those main speakers in this configuration with this placement. And the second one. So what have we learned from this? We have learned that some things can be fixed, but let's say these subwoofers were placed in a different location. The room was slightly different. If I'm sitting in a different location, then these subwoofers might actually sound quite decent in the default configuration because they are properly integrated with the main speakers. It's like a main speaker with some huge advantages in the bass because it's a subwoofer. It's able to be placed closer to boundaries. It doesn't need to be placed like these ones out into the room. Then you can place the main speakers correctly, so you get the imaging and holographic presentation. If you don't have that, what's the point of having speakers? You can have earpads instead. You don't need all those speakers and wires and measurements. Use some earpads. So we need to place them out in the room to get the imaging correct. And that's a very bad location for a speaker to reproduce bass. It's the worst location. So with the separate subwoofers, move them into the boundaries, and that explains why it is actually possible that in several rooms where systems like this exact system has been placed, the customer is happy. Is it okay? Maybe this customer doesn't have audiophile ears. It may actually be that the system performs quite decent, but in many, if not most rooms, there will be at least one huge resonance like we had here, and this resonance has to be fixed, and it can be fixed. It is not very difficult to do, and when we fix that, we have fixed the bad things in the bass range. Then we are left with creating that excitement and nice and good bass. And to be able to do that, it would be nice if we could fill in this hole. That is unfortunately not possible. So we have to live with that. If the subwoofers are to be placed like this, we have to live with that. And is this a system that is impossible to hear and to listen to? Well, we have the sound samples you can hear yourself. I will, at the end here, I will create a sample where you have the original, and then we have the different presets, the preset 1 default, and then we fix the EQ, preset 2, and then we fix the delay in preset 3. So we can fix some things, and some things cannot be fixed. And then the question is it worth the effort with all the wires and microphones and so on? You don't need the recorder, so most of the microphones is not necessary. You only need one microphone, and you can buy it. It's cheap, costs nothing, and comes with USB wire. So it's a USB microphone. It integrates well into the REW measurement software. I can also show you later, perhaps in a different video, how you can measure without connecting your laptop to the main system, to the system. Because you may not have this audio interface that I have under the table with wires and so on. Maybe you don't have that. Then you only need your laptop and your USB microphone into the laptop, and you can measure by playing back a pre-recorded measurement file, a measurement sweep that you can play back from your standard normal playback system. But you need to have a system that is possible to program, such as the DSP amplifiers in the T6 subwoofers here. If you don't have that, then of course you're pretty much lost. There is no hope. What can be fixed? We can fix annoying bass. That's the resonances. We can improve the slam. We can improve the character of the bass. What is difficult to fix? Large cancellations, dips, holes in the frequency response. You can fix cancellation theoretically. In practice, it's not so much a solution that works very well. Also, another thing that is difficult to fix with only two subwoofers is tactile feel. You're pretty much left with what you have. It depends then on the room, properties of the room, acoustics, and the placement, listening position you have chosen, and the placement of the subwoofers. Then we have the obvious things that can't be fixed. You can't extend the frequency range of the subwoofers. The large system here, it goes all the way down. You have a decent response down to 12 Hertz. So you can't extend frequency response. You can't extend capacity. Can't increase the capacity of a subwoofer bass system. So those small T6 subwoofers, they go down to 30 Hertz, and they have a limited output capacity. That is not because it is a bad subwoofer, it's a very good subwoofer. It has very good sound. It has a punchy, nice, tactile sound character, similar to the larger compact subwoofers. So it's a good subwoofer, but it's very small. It's made for a purpose, and for the purpose, intended purpose, it's a very good subwoofer, and it covers that need very well. And after all the bad is fixed, we have removed the resonance and so on, and ensure that the proper integration is in place. Then we can go ahead and see if there is something we can do here. We can use this as a starting point, and then we can adjust. Perhaps we would like more bass because we primarily listen at a very low volume. We'll still be able to have a little bit of nice bass. Then we can increase the level. We can also shape the curve. We can also add specific characteristics to the bass. If we want more slam, we can have that. We can adjust that by adjusting the frequency response of the bass system. If we want a more solid punch, we can have that. That is also an adjustment we can do on the frequency response. Of course, the starting point must be a system that is properly calibrated, and you need decent subwoofers. You can't have something, you can't have a toy. You have to have something real. We will have one last listening again with those sound clips. And there may be coming a separate video, short one with sound sample, some other music. Let's hear it. And if you want assistance to calibrate your own system, perhaps you want to change the sound, tune it into your special preferences, that is possible. That is something I can help you with. You find my contact information on my website at kvalsvoll.com.